Flynn.
Okay, thanks for joining us. We are back with Freddy Alexander, Lionel Gonzalez, and Logan. Logan, what's your last name?
I go by Logan Ryan.
Logan Ryan. And we are here with Don't You Dare podcast, and this is our third episode. Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Flynn. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here, guys.
Awesome. So we wanted to touch on the first and second podcast for a little bit because Logan wasn't able to join us. So we wanted to get some of his insights on the alternative ways of home building as well as water before we get into our topic for the day. So who wants to start off with a recap, a little bit of alternative home building?
Well, I mean, if we're recapping for Lionel, you know what I mean. I'm the proclaimed house builder, so
right.
So we talked about, I have this idea of what I think is a good way to build a house to address. How can we do it fast? How can we do it really cheap? How can it be really reproducible and use the least amount of technology possible? Not because I'm anti-technologist. I just think with the more technology you have, the more physical places there is for something to go wrong, for something to happen, something to break, something to mismatch, whatever. So I talked about that, and really I think for me the sort of pivot point of any alternative house building idea is just that if you go on the real estate market and you want to buy a house and you look at all the offerings, you're not going to find it. It isn't there at any price in most places. So that's the piece that's missing, So for me, it's just okay, what's everybody else done? What do I think is the one that makes the most sense? And how can we produce that and bring it to the market so that when someone does go, they can be like, oh, well, I could buy this traditional stick-built house, or for about the same price, I can get this other house that's going to use way less energy. It's going to last many times longer. It's going to be more comfortable. It's safer. There's not as many things that can happen to it, disaster-wise or just degradation-wise. So we talked about that, and then we went to water. Is water the new gold? Which obviously I think water is more important than gold, on a physical, personal level. But I do think that kind of water is the new gold because I think, we'll see how it goes. But right now in Austin and just Central Texas generally, I mean, I'm seeing home prices go down significantly in Austin and in the surrounding area. And so, what I'm not seeing go down is insurance, utilities, energy. Okay, our energy costs are not getting cheaper. We still continue to have persistent inflation. I think that energy is going to become, I don't know if it will happen, but I have this question. What if we get into a situation where the cost of the structure is not the barrier for people to have housing, but it's the cost of the grid utilities and insurances?
Right.
That sort of begins to outstrip the cost. Maybe the house is just more hardware. First it was VCRs and tape decks and televisions, and we just stopped fixing them and we threw them away. And we replaced them with new, and it was cheaper and it was fast and we had better technology. And then, we started having that with cars. It used to be the goal of a good car company would be how long can we make this car last for? Can it be a generational car? Well, now that's all gone. So we have cars with more technology. They're more efficient, but they're shorter lived. And so those kind of, now a car is sort of you don't, less and less, I think, will fix cars in the future, and more they'll just be replaced with another unit. And I see that progression now happening even with housing, oh man, it's good for a minute. It's cheaper to initially buy it, but what about in 20 years or 30 years or the next person who lives in it? I mean, it's a problem for that. It's a problem for the future.
Yeah.
So water, I think, is the same way. It's we're using water at a rate that's higher than aquifers are replenishing themselves, and some of them are. Some of that water is pretty old. It could be thousands of years old. So we talked about water. We talked about water and what do we do, and I don't have any answers for that. For myself, I just think, like, how can I live closest to the most abundant and cleanest natural water source that I can, and that's my solution. But not everyone can live in Silker Park in Austin, like it's 2 million people around here, it's like it's so what do we do? I don't know.
We did talk.
Go ahead, Flynn.
Oh, I was going to say we did talk about reducing, reusing, and recycling water.
Yeah.
And some of the ways that we can do that would help us as individuals, and then us as a community, and then us as a species.
Water harvesting, water collecting of different types, filtering water. I mean, all these things. Every single thing we've talked about, we haven't closed the book on it at all, and we've only scratched the surface. So all these things can go a lot deeper. We can continue going into them. The building stuff, I feel like good topics are questions. Or how many different inputs do you need for this thing to be a thing, to structure a building? And some of the more industrial, expensive stuff that's on mass right now being used is not like so DIY friendly, and maybe some of the natural stuff has more benefits there, where like normal people can work on their own houses and patch things up, do little maintenance things themselves. It's not like this I have to call a company or I need special things imported to my house to make it happen. Same thing with the car. The problem's like now it's getting to the point you can't work on your own car. These are specialty parts, specialty computer components, and all this other stuff. And it's like the prices are crazy. Even the toxicity and safety is kind of crazy if you look at some of these electronic cars that are supposed to be super green friendly. There's some catches to some of that. But yeah, I wanted to mention the thing about the shelter and different inputs. How many inputs? If you can simplify that with like, hey, there's only a few ingredients, it's pretty sweet and appealing to everybody on a large scale. That relates to the food, a little bit of food conversations we got into about like the grocery store and all the different ingredients that are on some of these things. And a lot of them are like toxic and poisonous. And you can make really good food that's good for you in a very natural, organic way. And it has like 2 or 3 ingredients. So all these things kind of relate to each other. The pros and cons of modern society, and then these ideas that we're trying to make more abundant and popular about, like, hey, what about nature? What about trees? What about these things that are just growing out of the ground? And it's not so easy, though, because then we get into who owns the land and what are the laws, and are we allowed to even collect rainwater in this state and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just a bit of ranting about all those topics.
Yeah, and to get back to alternative ways of home building, Logan was talking a little bit earlier about Terran Robotics. Logan, do you want to expound on that?
Yeah, the company in Lockhart. Yes.
Yeah, tell us more.
I don't know too much, but what I do know is basically their idea is to take robots and pair them with humans in a way that is not too reliant on tech, but does utilize tech to replace some of the heavy lifting that is usually involved with natural building. That's one of the things about natural building is that the materials are readily accessible and affordable, but the labor element that comes into play often makes it where the end product costs as much as a regular home, if not far more, from my experience and from people who I know who are professionally building earthen houses, is that the labor element is enormous. So I think the idea of Terran Robotics is how can we utilize literally dirt cheap materials and create robots that replace the most cost-intensive element of natural building, which is the human labor. And I could see that working on trying to expand it to a mass scale. But at the same time, I think like earthen building and bringing the people who are going to occupy the space into the process of building their own home is something that's more attractive to me. And if you have the time and you have the free materials, essentially, or very cheap materials, then you can build a very affordable home for yourself. But that requires the time and the labor and
a
the
team
land,
of people.
and the land and maybe the community that's involved in that process. I could see that allowing earthen houses to become more accessible. But currently, the labor factor is the biggest element in offering cost-effective or affordable natural homes for people. That's the biggest obstacle to figure out how to overcome. And I think that's kind of what Terran Robotics is attempting to address, utilizing some element of machinery and computer technology to replace that element.
Nice.
Do you think that at some point that that kind of building would be able to be somebody could get a loan on for a mortgage loan?
That's a very good question. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these solutions are not going to be solved in the city working with mortgage companies. These solutions are going to be like something that we solve outside of the city and outside of these regulatory frameworks, where maybe all we need is a permit for septic and then we can build whatever we want. But the element of getting mortgages and getting insurance those are interesting questions that I don't necessarily have the answer for, because it's like if you're going to build a home, the mortgage company's got to front the bill, then they want you to insure it, and they want to know like how much it's going to cost to replace it if it were to fail, and then you start to get into some really deep regulatory framework that personally I'm more interested in just experimenting with these things outside of these regulatory frameworks, outside of mortgage companies. That's my personal interest.
Yeah, it might have to start that way, and then everyone else takes an interest after it's like taken off, and they see attractive ones, and more often go out in the country and they're like, oh, I like what they're doing here in Wimberley. I want this over here in my house in Austin.
Yeah. Freddie was talking about this last time. He was talking about the spaceship house in?
Oh yeah, the Earthships.
Earthship house.
That's Michael Reynolds.
Michael Reynolds, yeah, who started that out in Arizona somewhere.
I think he was in Arizona, New Mexico.
New Mexico desert.
He was in New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a guy, and expound on this, but this was a guy who basically started something that was off grid, or sounds like it was.
Yeah.
Sounds like that, and then
started super off grid.
Yeah. How did that start?
Just like that. They started off grid. They just went into the desert and they built, they took old tires and packed dirt into them, made a berm, and they made a house that, was solar powered and could grow food and would capture rainwater and reprocess it and clean it. And they didn't need any utility connections or infrastructure. They just, I guess they made
everything they add on to it is like part of the same holistic system. It's like
and
garden, everything's closed loop system.
Closed loops, all that. They were self-contained. They didn't need a municipal utility grid in order to function and be habitable and hygienic and safe and all of that. And so eventually, the county kind of becomes aware that there's this sort of this neighborhood growing up, and they're building more and more of them, and there's just a bunch of people really liked it, and really, they lived in them. And the county said, well, you don't have there's no utility infrastructure here. Like, this isn't legal. This can't be here because there's no, and it's not so much because there's something wrong with it. It's the code at the time, and it was undefined. There was no language in the building codes to sort of describe what this is so that people could understand, well, there's no reason not to do it. So he struggled, the struggle was real for years and years, and eventually he was able to initially get like acceptance for experimental legality, and then the people looked at it and they studied it, and they got, more people got it, and so they created, the legal and code frameworks for those to be defined and for there to be language to express it, and now you can go and you can buy an Earthship with a mortgage, like a bank will lend on it. So that took a long time, but he's definitely a pioneer in that space, and he showed us that it's possible, and hopefully, like, I think it was at, years and years and years at great cost to him professionally, and surely like in probably every way, I can imagine. But hopefully it's easier as we go along. Like, he sort of was the first one to go. And so there's a pathway to that. There's a way to get there. And of course, I built and worked with codes and engineers, and so I there is a process. Like if there's something I see and I go, okay, well, this isn't really defined by the code. It's something, it's kind of a problem. It really is looking for a solution. So I go to the building authorities and I go to the engineer and I say, hey, what can we do to, like, I want to define this as a new code so that this is, it's a little better than what we have for this, for a very specific aspect of like stick-built framing. It's possible to change a code, but it's really challenging. Nobody wants to talk about it, and so sometimes I will look at that and we'll give up and just be like, okay, whatever it says in there, just do it that way. It's not as good, but that's what everybody wants because it's written in language, so they're convinced that it's better. So just give them that, and I just got to move on. So it is. Sometimes for me, I've found, well, it's just not worth it. For a piece of a house, for a whole house, I mean, that's a different scenario. How can we gain acceptance for something and bring it to the market and have it be insurable and mortgageable and understandable by people and safe and hygienic and effective and hopefully faster and cheaper, because if it isn't, then it's not going to happen on a big scale. So
that's the Earthship model, which it looks different than a standard house in suburbia or any of the houses we see around here in the city. It has such a weird, unique look. It really does have a spaceship vibe to it, kind of a nautical vibe to it, and then a little bit of the like old adobe houses kind of vibe, which is pretty cool, especially for New Mexico. It kind of fits that region. Looks like it's kind of appropriate, but a little weird, and like you can give it all these interesting shapes and curves and stuff, dome shapes, and a little quirky and weird, not for everybody. And then you were talking about the compressed earth brick and building sort of brick homes that would look more standard, conventional homes, what people see on the markets more. Which, I think that's probably more readily acceptable for most people around the country.
I think that's one of the best things about all the building alternatives is that it's a huge catalog of styles and looks and ideas and ways that there's so many ways that you can do something like, create a roof or a water system or an electrical system, and aesthetically just the variation, so there's a flavor for everyone, there's a style for everyone, and you can have something alternative that looks pretty much like the normal houses that are fill up cities. It doesn't have to be a departure from that, but it can be. It could be whatever you want. If you want traditional, that's possible. I think that it has put a lot of people off of alternatives because they think like, well, I don't want to live in a cave conversion. It's like, well, that's not what it is. That's not what people are doing. They're doing, it could be anything. It could look like anything.
Yeah. So Logan, based on what we've just been chatting about, do you have any ideas on this topic?
What the ideal material is? I don't think there's necessarily one answer. I've had time to explore quite a few different natural builds. I haven't done any from the ground up 100% myself, but I've set in and worked on a handful of different techniques. I've done some aircrete. I did an aircrete dome workshop. That was interesting. Learned some how to build masonry vaults using guides, and that was fascinating. But at the end of the day, I kind of came to the realization that domes are not necessarily the ideal structure maybe for Texas.
For Texas, okay.
They are very cool.
Why? I'm just curious. Yeah. I mean, I like domes, so but why not in Texas?
Mainly managing water. And I guess in this context, maybe different types of materials might be better for masonry domes. But the aircrete was not necessarily, because it's such a sponge-like material. And then your challenge at that point is to try to, how do you create a membrane over the structure to make it impermeable to water infiltration? And when basically you're at that point,
was it the foundation or was it the top of the dome?
No, it's the dome itself.
Falling?
The dome itself is the challenge because you're mitigating water. Now your entire house, your walls and your roof, it's all roof. You're 100% under roof. You have no straight walls at this point. And so the entire structure is exposed to water. And now you have to be very keen on how do you mitigate water, how do you seal out any kind of intrusion of water. And when you have a material like aircrete, which is very light and porous,
So that becomes like your maintenance jobs, like a couple times every couple of years or something. You start resealing the outside of it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they end up falling back like in this kind of environment. It works good in the desert where maybe it only rains, a handful of times a year.
Okay.
But in this climate, you end up falling back onto like elastomeric. Like you build this house that's made out of somewhat natural materials. It has Portland cement, but at the end of the day, you end up relying on plastic, essentially elastomeric coatings to seal them from rain. Which it was, I did enjoy building the geometry of building masonry vaults and domes is very fascinating, and how that goes about. I really did enjoy that. Then I've done some hempcrete structures, which is cool. Hempcrete, you could basically build any modern house that most people wouldn't even know that it was built out of hempcrete. Stick frame filled with hempcrete type infill material.
That's blocks they make out of
no,
hemp?
It's stick. Okay. You could do hempcrete, but most people don't do hempcrete. Is not necessarily. You can use it for like actual load-bearing structures, but most people do not, and code doesn't typically allow for that. So most hempcrete houses are stick frame houses, just like any house like this. You could just imagine this house, but instead of siding, instead of insulation, instead of drywall, we get rid of all those materials and we just have a stick frame house. And then those other three materials, the siding, the insulation, and the interior drywall is all replaced by one monolithic material and then the stick frame just becomes basically becomes the bones inside the structure. And you could build any modern house that most people could walk into one and not even know that it was built out of hempcrete necessarily.
Is this stuff being poured into forms, and that's how it gets
typically forming
built around the skeleton?
Forming is one technique. There's two different techniques. One is where basically it 100% encapsulates the stud framework, so it's more monolithic. It goes in and out and encapsulates both sides. And then the other option is where it's just inside the studs, and then they do like a thick plaster for the inside and the outside. So there's kind of two different options. But you can build a stick frame house, and then you set up plywood form boards that are spaced off the studs a little bit. And then you basically just mix up hempcrete, fill it in there, loosely pack it into the structures, and just work your way up. And that was the house that we did. That was how we did it. And we did it. The person who figured it out how to do it, they did more of instead of using Portland cement, which is very caustic to work with your hands. And it's kind of just nasty. I don't know if you've ever worked with if you ever work with cement, like the dust is.
Yeah, you don't want to breathe it in.
It's a serious problem. And so this build that we did, they did all magnesium. So it was magnesium oxide, Epsom salt, and that forms the concrete binder. And then you use hemp hurd for the insulative properties. And working with the magnesium oxide cement, it's kind of a game changer. Like you can work with it with your bare hands. There's no caustic burning. If anything, it'll make your nails stronger and make sure skin make sure all regenerates, because the magnesium oxide is way more compatible with our biology than lime-based Portland cement, which is pretty fascinating.
Can you talk about how y'all made the aircrete? You talked about aircrete. What's the technique to make that kind of alternative concrete? There's
a couple different techniques for manufacturing aircrete. The process that they used on this build was a foam generator. Basically, it's a special type of some PVC parts, some air compressor, and basically dish soap. And so you make a frothy foam, and then you mix up Portland cement with a specific amount of water, and then you replace some of the water, gets replaced with the foam. And then so you froth it up, and then you pour it in, and then you pour it into these basically just a big form, and then it's tricky to get it to. You want the bubbles. Basically, it's like air entrained concrete. So if you could imagine styrofoam but concrete, and then so the bubbles. You want the cement to set, but the bubbles to set within the cement before they pop. And so to get good aircrete, you want it's kind of like a spongy type pumice material. And so as it's setting up in these formworks, and before it gets totally cured, you can come in with any kind of woodworking tools. And I think in this case we just use wires. And so before the cement totally set, we pull these wires, and then that's how we made our bricks.
To slice it.
Yeah, we slice it like bread. And so we spent a couple days just making all the bricks for the dome, and then to build the house, basically you set up some simple wooden formworks, and then you use a telescoping, kind of like a compass arm, you can imagine, that can move in all directions. So it's like one center point of the dome is like a compass arm, and then that tells us where we lay all our blocks. And that was really fascinating, because I've done a lot of other building structures where you're using plumb bobs, and you're always trying to figure out the level and where everything goes and getting everything square. But in this case, it's so simple. You literally have one arm, and it's in the center of the structure, and that tells you where every block goes. Except for the doors and windows. There are some like different formworks that are involved in the windows and doors, but for the base of the structure, you have one compass arm and so anyone can do it. You don't have to have like.
It gives you the circumference. It gives you the height of the place, and it can be angled all around, so you can do a complete dome.
Complete dome, but it was pretty labor intensive, and like you can imagine when you're trying to take a rectilinear block and turn it into a dome, every little angle has to get cut. And so the aircrete can be cut with just woodworking materials, which is kind of interesting, that you can use any kind of wood saws to cut. Just simple hand saws can cut the aircrete material.
Cool.
And but every block has to be cut.
But you're cutting it when it's soft still?
It's cured. It's
already cured? Okay.
It's totally
That's
cured.
That's cool that it's that soft.
It does cure more over months, but even in its totally cured state, you can cut it with but it's very weak material, and so like
super light though. Yeah.
So when you build a structure like that, it's very light, but then all the tensile strength comes from you basically, after the whole structure is done, you have to coat it in like fiberglass mesh and plaster, so that's where all the tensile. So you basically imagine how like a surfboard is built, where you have this really spongy and inner core that is like the insulation and the structure, and then on the outside you have this like much more stronger fiberglass material. But in this case, it's typically like a fiberglass mesh with plaster coating on the inside and the outside, and then an exterior waterproof coating on top of that. But you could do aircrete with traditional houses. People do that. You could have stud formwork that you just pour the aircrete into. That's another option of working with it, with regular roofs and everything. So you don't have to build domes with the material. But
that's cool about a lot of these natural techniques is you don't have to do squares. You don't have to do domes. Like, you can be creative with it. But then it requires more engineering know-how too. If you're like trying to really test the boundaries of the material, you don't know the strength of it. You're trying to do some impossible height or something, or it's load-bearing and you're not taking that account, and you're over building on it. Plaster, what is that usually made of? Yeah, clay, water, some other.
Usually it's either. It could be a clay, but usually it's in this case, it was a cement-based plaster.
Okay.
But in a lot of earthing construction, lime-based plasters,
yep.
And then on the exterior it'll be lime-based plasters, and then clay-based plasters on the inside, or lime on the inside too. You could.
I was thinking about that when you were talking about domes not being super sustainable in Texas because of the water wear. And then also the heat comes back really hard too after you get water. So you get a lot of water and a lot of heat. It's got to take those elements really well. Yeah,
because you're exposed to you have a dome, so the sun is constantly tracking it. Like, you always have a surface that's exposed, and so it is pretty good. The aircrete does stop a lot of the thermal bridging that happens, but there's a lot of sun. On those structures as well.
Wouldn't plaster be a thing you would use to fix that damage after you've gotten water damage on your dome?
Yeah, typically they're using elastomeric coatings for the final exterior.
What is that again?
It's basically like latex plastic based paints type things for the final coating, which I'm not too into. I think in Texas, honestly, and in probably most of the country, the best solution is metal roofs, clean metal roofs that you can harvest drinkable rainwater, and that should be like a primary element in the design of any natural home. Is my personal opinion.
It could be a separate structure.
Like you could do, yeah. You could.
I've
have
seen that
separate
before.
structures.
People have like cob home or straw bale type thing, and then there's metal roof and like more traditional looking housing just around it to protect it, to give it shade, and also you can do water collection, various things.
For sure.
I have a question about the water collection. So you say a clean metal roof for water collection. So what is a clean metal roof, and what would be the opposite of that?
An asphalt shingled roof would be the would be the polar opposite for sure, because you're collecting water that's run over petroleum based products that are baking in 100-degree sun, and you're getting some of those like petroleum distillates and stuff in your drinking water and in your rainwater that you have to deal with filtering that out. Also, you probably don't want trees. As nice as it looks, you don't want trees overhanging your metal roofs that you're collecting water on, because there's the debris that some trees will literally eat your metal roofs because they can like splooge out exudates, and then there's also bugs that get on the roof and they splooge out exudates that will
Certain
eat through
things
the
have
roof.
toxins,
And then that stuff will disintegrate your metal, or you have birds up there that are shitting on the metal roof, and then you're collecting that into your drinking water. So like typically no trees overhanging your roof. Metal roof. There's a lot of different types of metal. Standing seam is the best metal roofs because there's no exposed fasteners that you got to deal with later on, but that's a higher cost. But yeah, I think metal roofs are the ideal surface for collecting drinking water for sure.
I've been curious about the most common coatings for metal roofs, and how is that affecting or is it not affecting the collected water? So the most common that I see in the market are, I will love to use a zinc coated material because that's going to be the most common and the lowest price point. There's baked enamel finishes. Now they have like new UV reflective kind of coating. So I don't know. Do you know anybody who's tested water from the different finishes or coatings on metal roof materials, and what can you teach me about that?
That's a very good question. I wish I had more answers to that, but there is a lot of coating. It seems like a lot of it has shifted away from the traditional zinc coatings, which was really popular for the most of the early 1900s. Now it's moved a lot to this galvalume, and some of those do have. There might be some kind of microscopic plastic elements to some of those. That would be something to explore and find out. I think the ideal roof material, if you could get like stainless steel or even copper roofs potentially. Copper roofs
Tin
might be
roof.
some copper sheeting.
Roof.
Might be something interesting to look into. There's a reason, like you look at all of the old churches and they all have copper roofs. And a lot of on top of the steeples, they all have copper roofs too. And some people think that there is some kind of, in some ways they've tapped into, somehow the copper is becoming like it's basically an antenna that's gathering energy that maybe gives those churches the power and the authority to like over the people. There are some people that think that there is some element where they are like harnessing the energy of the cosmos, and somehow that like they're basically utilizing that to kind of like prop up their own.
Did they
authority
also build the church on a ley line?
I'm sure, of course. Or what temple did they destroy
like
before
some kind of
that?
vortex
to build
on the land right there.
Yeah.
This is where we're building it. Put the copper roof on it.
Yeah.
Maybe some orgonite things going on it.
Or what pyramid is in the basement that they built on top of? Literally, what culture did they have to sacrifice to build that church on top of it? But I think that's an interesting question. Like, what do you build your roofs from? It's a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I think that copper is probably the highest price point for any roof, like
sure.
maybe even slate, but it also lasts the longest.
Yeah.
So it's the most expensive and it's the most long lasting. It's interesting that there's other lore about copper roofs in churches because
definitely.
Like now if you're if you own something and has a copper roof on it, I mean, not very many people, you're not going to find a lot of copper roofs because it's the most expensive one, but it's also the best one.
I've heard of the health benefits of those copper canteens and to drink your water out of those copper drinking bottles. Haven't got one yet, but it's on my list.
copper gutters too. You'll see copper gutter systems on very expensive homes sometimes, and there might be a reason to that. Maybe if you had copper gutters and you're harvesting drinking water, there might be
it's killing bacteria.
Yeah, there might be some benefits to that.
Yeah, copper is a little bit antimicrobial.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, and as long as there's not too much, there's a thing decades ago. It depends. There's a lot of argument in the plumbing world, like to go composite pipe or just copper, and there's the old school that says if it isn't copper, it's trash, and before that it was, well, if it isn't brass, it's trash. Well, brass is like a copper roof. Okay, it's the brass pipes are the copper roof of plumbing. So nobody's going to do that. I mean, some people might, but generally you're not going to see that in a new build corporate product in a house. So copper pipes, if the water will, sometimes will sit in the plumbing system for a long period of time before anyone first lives in the house and runs the water and uses it. And so the water will come out blue because there's so much of copper, the corrosion of copper turns into like a blue substance, and it's toxic. You can be poisoned from it, but it's like too much of it is not good. But it's also the reason why generally, copper pipes are considered to have a little bit of antimicrobial property, and that's one of the things that made copper really good. If your water supply is even slightly acidic, it will eventually eat the pipes and make holes, and that's why someone will say not copper. And the people who say yes, copper for life, copper for the generations, is their water is pH 2. Yeah, pH 2 a little bit alkaline. Too alkaline it's chemically a different problem. But if you're neutral to slightly alkaline, the copper pipes, that's probably the best plumbing you can have. But it's very sensitive to the pH of the water that goes through it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So some of the things we talked about, too, about water were reducing, reusing, and recycling. Logan, do you have some ideas on that you've come across?
I think gray water is the first thing that most people could do in their homes, for sure.
And what's gray water? Gray
water is all of the water that's not toilets in your house. So black water would be what's flushed down the toilet. Gray water is 100% everything else. Currently, we're taking all of that gray water, sending it down the same drain system that is a massive load upon the water treatment plants, when that gray water could be used for your vegetation around your house. It could be used to water your gardens. It can be used for an infinite number of purposes. The earthships that he touched on earlier, they have systems that recycle their gray water for many different uses. A lot of those homes, they'll have plant beds in the houses where they're growing food with their gray water right in the house. So the gray water will be used to flush the toilets. So you're not using clean, fresh water to flush your toilet every time, which is that's quite the luxury that we have here in America. But yeah, gray water can be utilized for a million different purposes.
Cleaning things outside, tools and cars and other things.
Yeah, an interesting thing here
it's not going to matter.
Here in the cities, even if you were to use your gray water, you will still be charged for the disposal of it. Say you go and hack your pipes up and you reroute your gray water to be used in your gardens outside, and you're not sending that down the drain for the water treatment plant to deal with, the city will still charge you for that, because every time you use your water, you're charged twice. You're charged for the use and for the disposal of that water itself too. Something interesting to consider. But other reuses of water, I think that's the main one to start with. Getting into like black water is a whole nother element. Like if you were to design and build houses from the ground up, how do you deal with sewage? That's a big
DIY sewage stuff on your own property.
Yeah. Using nature.
Compost toilets.
There are ways. If you haven't learned how to do this, don't try it.
Yes,
but there are ways that's absolutely 100%
Yeah, you can go
You know,
look
it's
up
safe.
humanure.
It's beneficial. It's the way. It's what we should be doing. I mean, it's not using our clean drinking water to, to take care of things. But that's the biggest barrier. I mean, that's why we can't just. That's probably the biggest challenge for, people who are van dwellers or they live in a car. It's like, well, what do you do about that?
Mm.
Awesome. So I think that gives us a recap and some additional insights from Logan for the episode that we had last week. For this week, let's get into a topic that is important to everyone, and that is, where does our food come from?
Comes from dirt. It comes from outside. Even though outside is dirty, that's where our food comes from.
I hope it's still farmers. Are farmers still growing food? There's grocery stores, there's farmers markets, there are people sometimes growing food in their own home, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, I think most people around here going to H-E-B or Whole Foods, Central Market or something to get mass-produced groceries. But yeah, where's it really coming from? Who's picking these fruit? That's an interesting topic. And the meat, where's that coming from? Is it mass-produced in the industrial scale? It's pretty depressing. Or is it people actually know these animals and they're grass-fed and loved and they're happy, living healthy lives, eating good stuff? It's a good question. What do you guys have to say?
I think access to food is probably one of the greatest security threats that this country faces. When you look back 100 years ago, we had probably people were producing close to 60 to 70% of their own food from their own property. And today, I can't even imagine how small the percentage is. It's probably, less than 1% of the food that people consume are being produced in their own yard. And then you look at a situation where they talk about in a disaster situation, how many days of food does this city have? If the supply lines were to shut down, trucking were to shut down tomorrow, we have maybe a week's worth of food, and we have millions of people to feed. This is the greatest security crisis, potential threat that the country faces, to be honest. Because, we need food and water at the end of the day, and if we're so dependent upon these supply lines, these international supply lines, and
You're
it's
vulnerable.
a very
Yes.
precarious place for us to be. We're all living under this illusion of security that we don't have to worry about growing food. We can just go to the grocery store and buy it. And it's like, that's great as long as it works. And hopefully it keeps working. Hopefully that supply line keeps working, but history tells us that that's not always the case, and that crises do happen.
And even if it is working, is this supply line giving you the most beneficial, food, most nutritious food? Is it safe? Is there long-term consequences to these supply lines that we're so used to that are usually there for us? They're pretty dependable and reliable, but there's cost to it, consuming that too.
I think you're right. I think those supply lines are honestly poisoning us to some degree.
Yeah.
Giving us cancer, giving us...
There's that permaculture guy that's like, you're complaining about the prices of organic meat. He's like, have you priced cancer lately?
Yeah.
like, have you seen the costs of that down the line? Compare that now. And maybe it's okay to spend a little money at the organic place or go meet an actual farmer at the farmer's market and get something that they grew themselves or raised themselves. And maybe it's a good idea to do some of that yourself. You don't have to do it all, but just like little input here and there, and taking back some of the power here and there makes a big difference. And it can cause a domino effect if it's just like, oh, everyone's doing a little bit of that. Now you have like a a community or a local little town that can like barter and have all these other options. So when the cataclysm hits or when a lockdown hits or something and they say all the supply lines are shut down, your neighborhood's not panicking or freaking out. They're like, oh, cool. We've been doing some of this stuff for ourselves already. So boom, into action. Resilience.
Yeah, there's plenty of places in the world you can look at currently, and they're going through those supply line crises currently right now, and you can get a taste of what, you know.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty of places that are basically living in the apocalypse at this very moment while we have infinite access to HEB and supply lines. We're very comfortable and cushy in the homeland here.
I saw some pretty scary stuff here in Austin during the pandemic when a lot of businesses were shutting down and some businesses were scared to open. There was one point where like the HEBs were only open for a little while and then they would close. They had like short hours and there were people like just lined up in the front. It looked like, are these bread lines?
Yeah.
Like, and the HEB was not open and there was just a huge line of people at multiple locations. So that was pretty grim to see. Just in this quick moment, it turned into panic. But, you know, things went back to normal very quickly. But that was just a little taste of, you know, how easy things can turn awry like that.
What about food production and the industrial complex version of it?
Yeah, pretty crazy. I'm picturing like chickens and cows in little tight cages where they have to like defecate on themselves and shit. And then little machines that just like corral them around from one little prison thing to another and pumping them full of chemicals, hormones, all kinds of stuff, fattening them up in the most harmful ways just so we can get a lot of meat, not so we can get quality food to people that nourishes them. That's what I'm picturing, but I don't know. I don't work in that industry or anything. I just seen some documentaries, learned a little bit about it here and there, and it's, yeah, pretty grim, but they feed a ton of people with this stuff, and we have all kinds of medical issues in this country from all that kind of stuff, too.
The other supply chain element to even have those mass animal feeding operations possible is they've got vast swaths of the earth that are being used to grow commercial grain crops that are all robotic
Right.
harvesters. So it's kind of similar to the housing element too, where when you start stacking these supply lines and technology and you become dependent upon them, it makes vulnerabilities that could come into the system like exponentially problematic. You know, say we have like an EMP and it wipes out all of the robotic farming equipment. Now they can't harvest the grains to feed the animals, and then you can't get the animals here.
Oh, you can't get the poison grain and the poison corn to us? Shit. I guess we should grow real corn and real grain, and then we'd be better off. Only being a little cynical there, but yeah. Grain's got a bad rap now because of all the processing that's involved in it. It becomes this other toxic thing. Same thing with the corn.
Yeah.
Like, corn used to be a beautiful natural thing. Now everyone's like, corn equals cancer. That's crazy. And they think of corn syrup and they think of Monsanto and all the fucking shit they spray on the corn. Turning it into like a hybrid thing that's genetically modified. So it's not your granny's corn and it's not your granny's grain anymore, unless you actually know people who are doing it the right way still, and they're not trying to mass produce for the grocery stores.
The genetic component and how the oligarchs have involved themselves in food is pretty fascinating subject too, and how they want to own the seed, they want to own the genes, they want to own the whole supply chain, the whole supply line. And I think it's inspiring to see some countries like Mexico that are basically like, no, like you're not welcome here anymore.
Yeah.
Like you're not.
Like places in Europe too, Italy, and they're like, yeah, we don't want the GMO stuff, we don't want the Monsanto stuff, take that shit out of here.
Yeah.
Nobody wants our food around the world. They're like, yeah, don't send us y'all shit, that's fine.
We are such a contradiction in that we have all this abundance, but here in but at the same time, like, what is the cost of this abundance, and is this abundance sustainable, and do we want to even be consuming this?
There seems to be alternatives everywhere I go. There's some people into the other stuff. There's always an option. It's just not the big popular option. It's not like everywhere widespread. And maybe it costs a little bit more.
What are some of the other options?
Farmer's market. Sometimes there's organic grocery stores, and they try to be more locally sourced and all of that. And yeah, less inputs, simpler ingredients, knowing the source of your stuff. It's like all things. It's like you want to know your weed farmer too, if you can. Everything. It's like, let's go to the source. Let's figure out where it is instead of, I could also use my cell phone, hit a couple buttons on here, and someone will just bring us food. You'll have it. Does that mean that's a healthy option? Is that sustainable? Is that good for future generations? Yeah, that's where it gets all deep and crazy and like, whoa, what are we doing in this highly connected world that we're living in where it seems like, yeah, there's abundance of all these great things. But housing, we talk about that, and it's like, doesn't seem very easy for us to get those things. Clean water, clean food. The more you look at that, it's like, man, you think living in a superpower, we would just have those things readily abundant, but instead it's like, actually you're getting like a low grade version of all this en masse, and it's really hard to get the good stuff.
I think the solutions are surprisingly simple too. They just require time and human energy and access to land and water. But growing
time and human energy.
Growing your own food, planting your own garden. These things are, I mean, we've been doing it for thousands, if not millions of years that humans have been on this planet. I think the solutions are surprisingly simple. We just have to figure out how do we get from where we are to where we want to be.
I like the idea of people gardening in their houses and little spaces, but I also think you might need some more land and you might need some animals if you really want to do it right and be sustainable and be like, I could provide everything for myself. Now, if you just want to supplement some of your meals and feed yourself some of the time and not have to get things from grocery store or wherever as much, that seems pretty easy for everyone to do. Like supplement some of that, take some of the power, and also, be able to just have free food just growing. Like a little bit of your grocery store grows out of your own property. Amazing. But raising animals and other things like that, I kind of want some land, and that part is like the financial and the economic part hit me a little bit. So I'm not there yet, but it's a goal. People can do it. It's definitely not cheap around Austin, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you look at how much you spend on food a year too, and like, it'd be an interesting experiment to see like how much time does it take to grow a small chunk of the food that you consume versus working a job to acquire the money to buy that food. I don't know about you guys, but I spend quite a lot of money every month on food.
What's your bill?
Scales are tipping.
What's your bill, Logan, monthly on food?
On food, I would say, it's me and my daughter. I would say at least $800 to $1,000 a month on food, probably.
Wow.
For two people. Let's say probably $200 a week on food. And that's just going to the grocery store. That's not going out to eat. That's not.
Yeah, and you're buying a lot of stuff you want to consume pretty quickly, not storable stuff or canned stuff, or you're buying things that it's like, this is fresh greens. We're going to eat this week, and the next day or two, produce that spoils quickly. Yeah. Meats.
And I do have a small garden too, so
you can supplement some of it from there.
That offsets some of a little bit here. But.
And what size is your garden?
Like 20 by 20 is the vegetable garden. Then I have
20 feet by 20 feet.
Yeah, and then I have a number of other beds where I'm growing fruit trees and herbs and more perennial type crops as well.
Are you doing raised bed, or are you doing it in the ground?
In the ground, and some raised beds that I've built up on site from some of the stone. It's like terraces kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's great. What about for folks who don't quite have that much room? Do you guys have any ideas on on how we could still grow some of our own food that way?
You could still grow quite a bit of, in a 4x8 raised bed, you can grow quite a bit of food. It's all about the quality of the soil that you have in that raised bed at the end of the day. Producing high quality compost. And those are usually the limiting factors in growing food is the if you're going to...
Maybe they could do some potato gardening in buckets or containers or something. That saved people from famine in the past.
Yeah, soil biology.
So I can grow a ton of potatoes.
Sweet potatoes, those are a good one. I mean, you look at some of these Polynesian cultures, and they would literally have 5 staple foods that they would put in their canoe, and they would feel confident that they could just get in that canoe, and if they had those species with them, they could just get in that canoe and they could fucking hit the ocean until they land on some random island, and then they knew they could survive on that island if they had those specific species with them.
I guess some of them are tubers.
Yeah, mostly like bananas, tubers, plantains, sweet potatoes, taro. There's like a
you could
handful
put these
of
things back in the ground and they will sprout and
Yeah.
then start multiplying. Yeah.
Exactly. A handful of these staple
The
crops.
bananas, how would they do the bananas though?
Like little babe, like the what do they call them? The ejos or the ninos?
So they'd
Like a little
uproot
pup.
the plant
Just a little. They
and
bring
then
a
have
pup.
some roots in the bottom of it.
They just bring a little pup with them for
Okay.
sure. Probably wrap it in some kind of.
A little banana sprout that's going to be a baby banana tree. Take it
Yeah.
out, keep its roots from drying out, I guess.
Coconuts, that was the other big one.
Cool.
But yeah, figuring out where you are. I think that's the key with any kind of sustainable farming is like where are you in the world and what are those species that.
I know figs grow pretty easily here, so everybody should have a couple fig trees.
Totally.
Seems like Austin, Central Texas is easy to grow a fig tree.
Yeah, we could have every yard in the city full of fruit trees instead of ornamental trees, and that alone would go, that would go quite a distance in producing an abundance of food for the people who live in these areas, for sure.
Yeah. So, like raising animals for food produces more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. So this could, growing our own food could help reduce that in some way, although they're raising animals for food. What do you guys think about that?
I think there's different ways to raise
Yeah.
animals, so just saying raising animals doesn't really tell you what method or technique or how many inputs are being involved in that project. They could do it in the most wasteful, most expensive, most exported way possible, or it could be like very natural and organic and like this animal's basically just living here while doing what animals do. We just don't let it totally escape, but it has free range to stuff and it's eating natural things. We don't even buy it food. It's just eating what's growing off of the land, and that system is like basically how nature works anyway. You're just kind of monitoring and like harvesting here. You're acting like another animal who's like, I'm just going to take a little bit. I'm not going to steal all of it and bring it over here and repurpose these resources and put it back into the same cycle again. So it depends on the methods.
Yeah, I think the methods is key. And I mean, with a lot of the statistics and like greenhouse emissions from cows, a lot of that comes from the commercial feedlot operations where they're measuring the methane that the cows are producing when they're not even eating their natural diet of grass. They're basically in these confined operations and they're being fed pure grain for the most part. And there's the specific type of stomach they have, is their specific kind of ruminant that they have these multiple stomach chambers that is specifically designed for grass and for grass alone, and not eating like these industrial seeds that are produced. And so they generate way more methane, and so that kind of steers some of these statistics. And I also do think with some of the methane statistics that are like saying that, oh, we shouldn't eat animals because they produce too much methane, you got to like look back at where those statistics are coming from and like
For sure.
who are the incentives behind that, who do they want to tax us for our carbon, like who wants
The carbon statistics too. It's like that's a whole nebulous little world there. And yeah, who's funding it? What is their agenda behind this whole anti-carbon thing?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you can use it to do all these great things. We need it to live. Plants need it. There's like people doing professional greenhouses and they grow these monster plants with carbon.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's got to be a catch there.
I do think there definitely is. And then you look at like Bill Gates getting involved in buying up all this massive farmland, and he wants to like make the fake meats for us so that we can not buy the cows.
He's ready to replace all farmers. He's done with them. He's past that. He's so in the future. We don't even need farmers anymore. Psychopath. There's a picture of him with all his books on his desk, and one of the books is How to Lie with Statistics. I always send that picture to people. just think about this. Like during the COVID days or some of this green movement, which I'm very much into green stuff, but I think some people behind the big green movement are not your friend. That's what I think. But I'm all about green stuff. I'm down with ecology, botany, and all that. But some of these big tech solutions to it, and this like hate carbon movement, and farmers and rural people are dirty and they're poisoning us, and we need Bill Gates to clean it up, and like everything needs to be in a lab and done with robots, and people don't have to work on that anymore. It's like, that's a slippery slope right there if you're going to follow those guys. When have they ever been good for our health? Like politicians and these people, like when have they really been good at figuring out health stuff? I've never noticed that. But they have big claims, and they do have a lot of money, so watch out for the money and power that they have.
Yeah, I do think it comes back to the housing. The housing element is such a massive one too. Even when we're considering food, it's like, how do you get people out of debt slavery? When people who are in debt slavery are less concerned about like, okay, let me go out and like plant a garden and grow a garden. Like debt slavery becomes the primary driving factor of all decisions that we make, and that's connected to housing in such a fundamental way. It's like such a massive problem, and
you
I'm
got
not
a
sure
mortgage?
I'm not sure how that is solved. But we have to figure out some way through housing and access to land that people can be free of debt slavery. I feel like that's the hardest problem and the most important problem to solve in any of this. Because then people, once they're free of that, then they have time. Now they can grow gardens. Now they can.
And a little bit of security is good too, because then you might try something different, take a risk here or there. But if you're strapped really tight, you don't want to take any risks. You're like, I'm on this ship right now. It's going this way. I got to ride this out. Like I can't just jump off. And your friend's asking you, like, just take one step off. Like put one leg on the boat, one leg on here, and just try both for a little bit. Like just slowly shift over to the other paradigm. You don't have to go cold turkey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you totally about the debt thing, the mortgages, people being tied to those, which is like a marriage. I think the etymology of mortgage is death, pledge, mortgage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll affect your decision making about how do I get food, shelter, water. And if all those needs are already met, the animal part of you feels like, okay, I'm safe. This is how I do this. I got to go to work if I want these things to be checked off the box every day, every week, every month. I need the basic needs met. So yeah, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, rebuild a house with different materials, change your lawn around so that it grows food. Sounds like a lot of work to most people who have no time, not a lot of expendable cash. I'm not trying to sound depressing either. I think there are ways to do it, but I'm also trying to recognize that some people are like, dude, I am so stuck right now in this thing. I can't change anything, but you can. You just, it seems like impossible, and it seems like it goes against your security and safety.
Yeah.
It's a psychological thing there a little bit, but
it's easier to farm in Minecraft than it is to farm in the real world.
Yep. Maybe they'll send you some Bitcoin or something when you do really good in Minecraft. You can buy food from the farmer's market with that.
It's easier to build a house in Minecraft too, I guess.
And then you send that to somebody with a 3D printer and they make the real thing for you.
What are you saying, man? Video games are easier than life.
They're more attractive. You get dopamine a lot quicker, I guess.
A ready supply. Yeah. Man, you really picked a hot potato, Flynn.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I feel like intimidated even to say anything, but I mean, I get it. You know, like I started on the food journey maybe in like the early 2000s, so about 20 years ago. I started it was a years long progression, which ended with me, ultimately, after living in Florida and building condos and doing the housing market crash and all of that, and seeing the economic just utter destruction that was all around me. I just thought, well, what even can I do? Like, all this just seems so meaningless, because in 90 days, like, everything that we worked for can just sort of evaporate and not exist. So I went on the food journey. I volunteered with an environmental nonprofit, and I lived in a forest, in a place where we were growing food. We had animals. They did all that as part of it. We built experimental structures. And so, but for me personally, my personal part of it was, before that, in my 30s, my entire diet was, every meal is some kind of bread with some kind of meat and some kind of cheese, and there could be potatoes with it. There could be some lettuce and tomato, whatever. But that was basically my diet, and I lived in a city, and I did, regular workaday Joe kind of stuff, and I would stop every day and have lunch, and I would stop and I would have dinner. But my energy was very volatile. And I noticed this when I went, like, I lived outside, I worked in the same place, there was no commuting, I didn't use a car, I didn't need to do any of that. And I noticed, like, how my energy level, and that means, like, I would feel like I'm full, I don't want to eat anything, and I'm working, to, like, now I feel sort of shaky and unstable, I don't have energy, I have to eat something. And that was a kind of short time period. Well, this place, there was a vegetarian and sometimes vegan meal. Someone made it. It was their job. It was their contributions. They made a bunch of food every afternoon and in the evening, and it's just, anybody who was there, you can have it. You don't have to, but it's there if you want it. If you want meat, anyone's free to go get and eat, whatever you want. So I just sort of went, okay, well, I'm going to just try this out, and it's simple, it's easier, and just see what happens. And I noticed over time that my energy level evened out, and it's if I missed a meal or I went a long time without eating, it didn't seem to matter as much. And I would notice, people sort of coming, like, maybe they're there on day 1 or 2 or 3, and they lived the similar life that I did in a city, and their energy level is very spiky, and they're like, oh, hey, I want to help out with this. What are y'all doing? You tell them, and you get about an hour in, and I can see them shaking, and they have to stop, and they're like, I need to go eat something. And I get it, because that's how I was in the beginning. And so some of it, I think, was just activity. A lot of it was diet. And I've found, after about a year and a half of this, I've found that if I would eat meat, once or twice in a month, that sort of, I've felt, I felt my baseline better than normal. So I just sort of found something that worked for me. And I watched the film that you recommended, and it seemed to be saying, it's like, well, 1 egg is too many. Okay, I get the ideal, and I will not debate about vegetarianism versus veganism versus omnivorism, but because I do think that different bodies are different. I don't know. I only have my own body to inhabit, and I went on this journey in earnest to try to get these questions answered for myself. And so I found what works for me. And then soon after that, I have a good friend who is a cancer survivor. And I guess at one point she was concerned that it had come back. And so she went to a very famous cancer hospital in central North Carolina. And we both were in the same state at the same time. And I went with her, to see about this, just kind of to support her. It's nothing really for me to do. So I remember taking a doctor's appointment, and she went in to see the doctor. They were going to spend about an hour, and I said, okay, that's cool. I'm just going to go. I'm sure they have a cafeteria or something here. It's a cancer hospital, so maybe there's something good that I can go eat while you're in there. And so she went away. I went to the cafeteria, and, I had come from the environmentalist life of living outside, and I drank surface water from outside, and I ate food that was grown, in the same land that I lived on. And, and I learned, like, what is plastic in water and how can we avoid that, and, as much as we can. And, my own food journey and all of that. And so I go to this cafeteria at this famous cancer hospital, and they have there's only water in plastic bottles. There's refrigerators of soda. They had fast food restaurants, and there was literally I chose not to eat. I think I got a coffee or so. I was like, well, I'll just overlook the water and I'll get the coffee, and I had a coffee. I'll wait. And when my friend came out from her appointment, I was remarking on this because I said, I was kind of taken aback by the cafeteria because this is a famous cancer hospital and their choices are all all the food is in plastic. They have fast food. They have the things that I think are
contributing.
People trying to beat cancer shouldn't be this isn't the way, is it? What does your doctor think about all this? I just was so surprised. And she was like, oh, we don't talk about diet. When I'm with the doctors, they will not discuss it. Nobody's talking about it. Yeah, what you're seeing is real. It sucks, but that's what it is. But this is not the place to come to talk about food. But we can go somewhere else now, and we'll have something good to eat. Because she got it. I mean, she was very educating me, on my food journey. She's like, well, this is what I found works for me, and I survived cancer. And I thought, okay, well, that's good, sort of good evidence for me. I can see she's walking around, and I'm trying some things. And so those are my two personal experiences on the food journey. And I just say, I don't have answers for anybody other than myself, but I do want to encourage anybody who's hearing this, if you have questions or you're thinking about this or you're having this feeling or you have health issues, go on the food journey, go meet people, go try different things, find something that works for you. This is so controversial. I mean, but if you're hearing this, do it. Go on the journey. I did it. It didn't fix all the problems in my life, but I still have my own struggles, but it definitely helped. I do think that I have a better quality of life for going on the food journey, but I invested a lot of time. I invested a lot of time in it, just sort of thinking okay, well, this is probably harming my, ratios of ever retiring or, that sort of thing. But then again, it's just I had just seen economic destruction in my, in my late 30s. And I just thought, oh, now what I want to do, well, I want to retire someday and go hiking and swim in mountain streams. But if I work until I'm 90, I might not be able to do that, or I might not live that long. So I'm just going to go now and do it. And that was my solution, was just to be I'm just going to go do the things that I think I want to do the most, even though I don't think I'm not in a place where America says you can't go do that. You need to, you need to have a regular job. You need to have a job that's respectable. Well, what is that? I don't know. I mean, I work.
Yeah.
I work on things that I think are important, and I took time to do something that was just important only for me and no one else cares. But I'm glad I got to do that, and I went on the food journey, and now my relationship with food is definitely different than it was 20 years ago. So whatever is the outcome, I mean, I think anybody that seeks in earnest you're going to find something. You're going to figure something out, even if it's just a piece of it.
It's crazy how much the body can adapt to different intake and different energy inputs and transform, really, where at one point you might think I could never eat less or something, and then all of a sudden less is more for you, and your body adapts to it, and you can sustain your energy metabolism is in balance. People should experiment with that and figure some stuff out. I think overall America can eat less, and we've gotten into some crazy appetites and crazy expectations about meals and foods and stuff. I like that story.
Why do you think that doctors are not talking about diet?
That is a widespread thing. I don't think it's unique to his story, but what do you think about that?
I think that isn't unique, that was not probably a one-off event. I don't know the answer, I don't, but in that time, I mean, I did talk with my friend about that. It's well, why? Because I was sort of astounded, I was well, why wouldn't you? That's that seems so crucial. That seems like the best. How is that not the starting point? And so I got an education about cancer treatment and, your odds and just all of the whole, the business of it, and so, people will say it was like, well, if you cure cancer, there's no more money in cancer. I don't think that's untrue. I mean, that's a very crass, wow. It's hard for me to imagine. It's like, is there people that really they sit in their penciling and they're being like, oh, look at all these cancer deaths. Ching, ching. I guess that happens, but that's pretty psychopathic. I don't know. I think a part of it is, at the same time I knew someone who figured the food thing out for themselves and cancer and all of that. I think that diet is so controversial, because that's one example of one friend and one, story that happened. But there's been, for that, there's hundreds of others. I worked every day for a year and a half. In a year and a half, I met I met around 10,000 people from all over the world. And part of what we were doing was well, here's the natural environment, so there's no heating, there's no air conditioning. We're just sort of outside. There's a screen, hut. That's what you're staying in. That's what you're paying for when you come here, to have an experience of being in the environment. And so the food that was there was part of that, and conversations about all of this. And I just found over my time there that talking with people about food is it's like talking with people about religion. It's a great thing to do, but if you're going into it thinking you're going to change someone's mind, maybe. Good luck with that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I've known a number of doctors and physicians and scientists, and I ask them about these things because I'm, kind of stupid about a lot of things. But so I know it's okay, well, if I want to learn about this medical thing or this nutrition thing, or how does the body process these compounds, I'll go find who do I know anybody who works for Mayo Clinic? Who do I know, that I can go, this is their life's work, is studying this, and what can I learn about it? And, food is just super controversial, and they report to me that when we work with patients and there is a solution that deals with diet, it is a tiny, tiny percentage of that cohort of sick people going to seek treatment that will accept you need to change your diet. It was pretty ubiquitously the experience of scientists and doctors that I've met and interviewed that they say very few people are willing to even talk about food. So I think it's a two-way street. The doctors and industry is not going to talk to you about food, and individuals are not going to talk to you about food because they don't want to talk about it. For whatever reasons, I don't know. I'm only, myself, but this is a curiosity to me, and I've sort of explored this. And I've been what is the deal with this?
You're taking away their control over one thing they can totally control is what do I put in my gullet?
That makes sense. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I don't really totally understand the psychology of it, but it's just, that's what I've found. That's the evidence that I was able to look at and parse through. Is it it isn't just one, it's just nobody wants to.
They're more in the business of patch you up, stitch you up, surgeries, make a bunch of money on that. There's other business things besides just the cancer angle. Give you medications, provide scripts, pharmaceuticals. That's a huge thing in hospitals and getting people on the right medicines. That's Western medicine for you. That's the allopathic path of healing. They're more about that stuff, and that's what the business structure is all built around. Not on diet advice, nutrition advice. I think you got to go see someone else for that. Nutritionalists or holistic medical stuff, holistic doctors, they seem to be more into that. But the allopathic, the Western side, seems to be more we're good at surgery, we can fix anything, stitch you back up. And also we have all the drugs that you could ever want, and that is a huge industry. You could say they're a big arm of the government, really kind of helping prop that up. Big oil, all the big energy. I see that as more powerful than when I see the president on the TV screen. I think about Pfizer and all these big names, Raytheon, and those people were kind of running things more. And yeah, medical is big money.
Yeah, I think also they're just not, why doctors are not talking about diet. They're just not taught about diet. And when they go to school, it's not even a subject that is even brought up.
It starts
in their
early.
Educational system. As being trained as a doctor, they're not being trained as a dietitian or as a doctor. And I think sometimes maybe they just don't, they just don't know enough about like how food affects these diseases and whatnot. But it's no coincidence that these diseases have grown as industrial agriculture has exploded and the lack of people growing their own food has decreased. I mean, there's a direct relationship between these trends for sure. I mean, in my personal opinion,
You think if they really cared about health deep down inside, they'll look at the whole thing, the entire thing. But they're not. Their paychecks don't depend on them knowing the entire thing.
And the human body is, I mean, because for a long time in schooling and in health schooling and doctor schooling, like they look at the body like a car. Like we have these parts, and these are what the parts do. But at the same time, the degree of the genes that are existing in our physical organisms are far greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, there's communities of bacterial organisms that exceed the physical, like organs and tissues and structures, and science is just scratching the surface of like what is actually going on there in these biological. I mean, we are an entire universe inside, like beneath our skin and in our skin. Like they just don't entirely understand how food is.
But they're the reason that you're hungry for a certain thing at a certain time, or they're the reason like you get sick or heal. They're healing you as well. It's like you're part of your immune system. But when the bad bacteria population gets bigger than the good bacteria, it's just like plants. It can fucking kill the plants.
Exactly.
Like, it's all connected.
There's a lot of people that think cancers are potentially, they're not just like a cell that actually went awry, that it's like a conglomerate of some community inside the universe of your body that has become
I've heard some similar
pathogenic
things.
Or become basically parasitic upon the rest.
Candida, that. I've heard of it explained that way too. Cancer being kind of more like a candida, like a fungus operating in your body.
I think fasting too is a powerful tool. Like we talk about how do we eat to cure cancer? The other question might be, how do we just not eat?
Have you tried
for
not
periods
eating?
of times? Have you tried waking up and not consuming anything for a day? How many people on the planet have gone a single day with not consuming anything? I mean, maybe some people have done it out of need because they didn't have access to food.
They were forced to,
They're forced to, but I mean, most people in America, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a percentage of people who have gone a single day in their entire life with not consuming something. And so I think the power of fasting.
It's an ancient technique of like cleansing your body and stuff that's been around for so long. There are some people preaching it right now as health benefits and stuff. Cleansing, detoxing, and we need so much of that in this part of the world.
You know, talking about cancer and diet, the World Health Organization classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen. That's the same group as cigarettes, asbestos, and plutonium. Red meat is a Class 2 carcinogen. What do you guys think about that?
I think they just want us to eat bugs and be happy or something.
Have you heard of the World Health? That's one of their slogans for the future. You'll own nothing and be happy. That's interesting. What was before the red meat? It was the
processed meat.
Well, that I'm with them there. And red meat sounds too general and vague, but processed. I feel like we've made some crazy stuff in the processing industry. That's where you get all the crazy ingredients that you can't pronounce added into things. This is just to preserve it. This is just to give it a color. This is just to give it this flavor. All these things are getting further away from like just real food, just like actual food.
There's a good possibility that shit does kill you, but to group in just all red meat, I think some of those declarations Declaration type statements are basically geared towards, I mean, it's so obvious. Like Bill Gates buying all the farmland, he wants to make fake meat. They want us eating fake meat and bugs. Like,
yes, first Africa, then the world.
yeah, to say that red meat is like the enemy, but this is their solution of how they're going to make us healthy and feed the world. It's like, fuck you. Like, no, I don't.
He's not trying to empower people to become farmers or grow gardens in their yard. That's for sure. He's definitely not teaching that. It's a scheme. He wants to be like a monopoly man of health and food, and he's working really hard, really fast. He's all over the place, doing all kinds of things. There was something I was going to say about the whole cancer thing, and diet. You guys can go what my brain processes, but continue if you want.
I think that about sums it up in my personal opinion of the World Health Organization's declarations of what humans should be eating. I don't know. I'm not really on board for their recommendations.
Yeah, I'd rather listen to a farmer that lives down the street than listen to the WHO.
Yeah.
You got anything?
For me personally, eating meat is sort of like living with a wood stove, which I have done. And, I lived with a wood stove, and I chopped wood even in the wintertime. I grew up in grasshopper land. I grew up at a beach. There was no freezing weather. And then I'm living in a mountain, and it can be 10 degrees outside, and I'm chopping wood, and that's all my heating and all my cooking. And I could burn a lot of wood, and it would never get too hot. It's like a house that's made out of logs, and the wind is sort of blowing through. Like, it doesn't matter how much wood you burn in the stove. You're never going to overheat it. If it's 0 degrees outside, there's no way. You cannot burn too much wood, but you can. So my point is that there's sort of a minimum. I've figured out after a while, this is how much wood I need to put in there to keep a baseline of heat. To always have, there's always some warm water. There's always some heat. Some heat for my body, and if I need to cook something, it's kind of ready to go. And how to, put in something big enough that would sort of burn for long enough for me to get a good night of sleep without, dying inside.
Nice.
And so it's just my personal experience. I found that eating meat every day is sort of like throwing extra wood in the wood stove. It's burning it. It's nothing immediately bad is happening, but over time, you got to clean it out more. There's more ash. It's putting smoke into the atmosphere in the house, and that's it's blowing out because it wasn't like a house that would pass a blower door test.
Right.
It's like something from the 1800s made out of logs, so it's very leaky. So that made it inefficient, but the smoke would go away. But that's, to me, is I don't really need to eat meat every day. It's like I've learned about my minimum amount of meat that will just it won't change the way I feel. It won't affect my energy and things like that. But eating more of it, I actually do notice that, where it's putting too much. It's just wasteful. I view it as wasteful for me. I don't feel as good if I eat meat every day, and it's expensive, and it's just like luxury fire.
Yeah.
What about
definitely has some benefits.
Go ahead.
You get some power from it, so there's a reason. But maybe you don't need it all the time. Maybe there's only some times where you really need to stock up on the iron, the protein, and all the stuff that's in there.
I mean, it's just maybe it's psychological. I don't know, does it matter if it's psychological or physical? I mean, my visceral, my experiential.
I think lifestyle plays a role. Different people will say different things. How much energy is this person burning? How much calories are they burning? What kind of environment do they live in? And then you can talk about plants and meat and what would be the ideal diet for them. And maybe they don't need that much meat. Maybe this person just needs a piece of salmon a week, and the rest is herbs and plants and stuff. What were you about to say?
I just think it seems pretty scientifically solid that there's elements that humans require from animal products that are not obtained from the purely vegetal world. I mean, you just look at human beings. I mean, we've been in this form of Homo sapiens, I mean, at least 500,000 years. And you would be hard pressed looking through the fossil record or any existing indigenous communities that have ever survived with zero animal products. They just don't exist. And there's a reason for that. It's because human beings do require animal products to some degree because there are elements that are just not accessible from the purely vegetal world. It's just impossible for there to be a thriving breeding population of Homo sapiens
Civilization, procreating, all
without
that,
some form of animal products. Like, it just doesn't exist and never has existed and probably never will exist. But maybe Bill Gates wants to change that, and he's got ideas of how that's going to happen and how he's going to save us from the red meat that's killing us. But I just don't see it.
What are some of those elements that we are getting from animals that we're not getting from plants?
Specifically, fat-soluble vitamins and B12, and there are other elements that are just not available. Sure, you could eat a vegan diet and buy supplements, and
you could try to
maybe
supplement
skate
the
through in that way. But I mean,
eat a shit ton of avocados. There's a lot of fat in that. What else?
But even the types of fat, there are specific fat-soluble vitamins that get concentrated in. But the flip side of that is, like, some of those fat-soluble vitamins that we thrive on and are required for our well-being are from animals that, in the case of cows, are from cows that are raised specifically on grass. And so they go out there and they concentrate these elements in the chlorophyll that then get imbued into their fat and that then we consume. But we don't necessarily get those from eating industrial farm-raised cows. Mm-hmm. And so that is a component of, like, why you could eat a bunch of farm-raised cows. Like, a lot of these statistics about, like, meats causing cancer, the statistics behind that are so unbelievably flawed because of, like, what is the source material that you're starting with for the testing? Like, are you testing humans that have been eating industrial farm-raised cattle, or are you testing Mongolian herders who have been eating farm-raised ungulates who exclusively eat grass? Like, these are totally different subjects to even, like, address. So, yeah, on one sense, you might be able to, like, make the claim that red meat causes cancer and is a carcinogen, but it's leaving out so much more information. And it's like, you know, the people who have been eating traditionally raised ungulate animals who have fed exclusively on grass and thriving, and that's their main source of calories. And these communities, these indigenous communities, have been thriving like this for thousands and thousands of generations. I mean, to say that they're all riddled with cancer because they're eating that red meat, it's just like, the statistics are totally flawed, in my opinion. And I think the real solution is getting back to eating real food raised in traditional manners and in the traditional ways. Like, there is indigenous wisdom in these foods, and I think that's what we got to get back to. We got to get beyond the industrial agricultural system that's basically poisoning us and killing us.
Yeah. That is, like, the model of this country. Even though people do all kinds of alternative diets and do different things, when people talk about the food over here, they're mainly talking about what's the big box stores providing for people on a mass scale. And that's not the whole picture, but it's like, that's what's kind of killing people. That's what's putting us in this socioeconomic situation that we're in. It's all part of it. Like, it's a big chunk. It affects everybody, even if you diet or eat differently than just shopping at freaking Walmart or whatever.
For sure. I mean, we've got plenty of examples of indigenous communities. Like, look at the Eskimos. They survive off, like, you know, whale blubber and seal meat, and like that's the only green vegetation matter that they even consume is like the kelp that they cut out of the stomachs of the animals that they harvest from the ocean. They might find a little bit of green plant material in there, and that's the only vegetable material that they consume. And the rest of their diet is 100% meat, but they don't have cancer, they don't have diabetes, they don't have diseases, and so it's like the subject is way more complicated than like how much meat do we eat versus how much grains, a lot and less vegetables
inputs going on there.
And
I thought of that thing I was going to say earlier. It was more when we were talking about cancer in the body, the gut bacteria that we have, the microbiome, and plants kind of have that going on too. That's the soil, that's the microbes there, the bacteria there, the fungi there, all these words that to some people, and to some people even who have they have letters after their name, they don't know much about that stuff and how it's all connected. And Monsanto, the way they treat plants is like someone who doesn't know about what the soil's composed of, and that there's like a whole kingdom down there making your food grow, making it taste good, giving it vitamins and nutrients and minerals and all. So your stomach's kind of has that same world. Like you could say, this is the soil. There's like a compost heap going down here. There's microbes breaking that shit down, composters, there's fungi in there. And some of these solutions provided by the powerful and the rich are like, just kill all that shit. Yeah. We built this thing and it'll just wipe all that out and you start clean fresh every time. It's like, really? So just till the whole garden, fucking get rid of all that life down there, put our chemicals in, your plants will have the best fertilizer, they'll grow so big and strong. They'll poison the people that eat it, but don't think about that. Just think about fresh, clean, and you got a one-stop shop. You buy all the things from us, we'll sell it to you. This gets into Monsanto, who's gone through crazy psychopathic levels of like, we're going to alter your seed so much that it won't even grow naturally anymore. It'll become a patented product. Yeah. And if you want to grow more next season, you go to our store and buy it directly from us. Like pretty evil sounding stuff, not to be dramatic, but the more you think about what that can do to life on a large scale, and if that becomes like just the way all food, like Monsanto, Bill Gates, they all get together, maybe Musk is involved, that's where our food comes from, and it's just this huge monoculture tech bro driven thing. Sounds pretty dumb.
The Terminator genes.
But they're moving fast. They have a lot of money. Yeah, the Terminator, they called it the
Terminator genes they put into so that the seed will
like eat other organic ones and replace it with more of its patented brothers.
Or it won't even reproduce. Like the seeds are
it makes them infertile.
It makes it where the seeds are incapable of reproducing viable offspring. They have to make the seeds in a lab basically through these processes.
Sterilizing things. Man, who's into that? Yeah, anyway, where were we?
So let me ask you guys on a personal level, what is your diet, Lionel?
What is my diet? Vegetables and plants and a lot of meat, honestly. Not trying to do low meat, but try to get good quality stuff. Farmers market type stuff, organic grass-fed things. I really like seafood, so I do a lot of that, a lot of sushi, sashimi, raw stuff. You can go to Quality Seafood and get your own sashimi if you want to prepare some sushi at your house.
In Austin.
I usually feel pretty healthy when I'm doing that kind of stuff. And then some fasting here and there, skipping meals, using coffee as a meal replacement sometimes. And then I eat a shit ton at the end of that day. But yeah, try to be smart at the grocery store and stick to some more organic type things. Or I wish there were more options for that kind of stuff, and I wish I had more from my own backyard. But my backyard garden kind of ebbs and flows. Sometimes there's an abundance of things there, but other times it's just kind of, there might be a couple of things here, fruit here. It's not something I want to make a big meal out of, but it might be like some foraging that I can do, and I get a handful of some energy from little berries, some figs, maybe some type of roughage you can eat, some greens, a little salad, but nothing major. Never had my garden where it was just like I can just feast, invite friends over, and we just eat this stuff all the time. But it's not impossible. It does take work and time and all that. Tending to the garden.
Awesome. Freddie, what's your diet right now?
Mostly tacos. I mean,
Love tacos.
I definitely, I'm probably not. How can I say? There is a diet that I found that works best for me, and I'm not on that right now, and so I'm kind of sympathetic when people are like, I won't change my, because now I'm living in a city and tacos are very easy, and so in the bag today I have some birria, which is like a Mexican version of pulled brisket. And then I have another one that's just it's potatoes and beans.
That's the one that the birria is like saucy, and there's like a gravy that you can dip it in sometimes.
Yeah, it's really delicious.
It's so rich and good.
It's really good. But I like the flour tortillas, and I actually know the guy who gets up early before the sun and makes the tortillas every day. And so
that's the best.
Yeah, they're not like the ones from the store. So to me, I notice it. I can tell the difference between the store ones and the ones that somebody makes. Mm-hmm. But that's my diet, so that's mostly tacos.
I think good advice for anybody on diet is avoid the coloring, the enriched, the processing, the canned and packaged and boxed stuff if you can. All of that stuff leads to a long list of weird additives and things that weren't there in the beginning. Some of those products, they actually start as non-food, and then they add a long list of non-food things on top of that. It's just crazy. So, if you just tell people who don't know much about it, avoid processed and boxed and canned stuff, and see if you can make some more whole meals out of simple ingredients, already they're doing better than a lot of people who are fucking Uber Eating just processed shit to their house and stuff, or living off of fast food and restaurants and stuff. Austin does have some pretty good restaurants, though. I'm not going to shout out to any of them, but there's some people doing some good stuff, keeping things local and trying to get ingredients from around their community to the restaurant and prepare some fresh shit for you. So that's good.
The farm to table type thing?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes those are pretty pricey, but it's very nice. What about you, Logan?
My diet is mostly, I try to do whole foods as much as possible, so at the grocery store, I think a good rule of thumb is the more you can eat around the edges, the less you're going into the interior,
the center aisles,
the center aisles, the better, so it's and I try and get mostly organic if I can, or at a farmer's market, but yeah, eating whole foods, fruits, vegetables, proteins, ideally from farmers if I can. Just try to minimize processed foods as much as possible. Try to avoid seed oils as much as possible.
Seed oils, fuck yes.
Industrial seed oils is a big one. Try to avoid that shit as much as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much. Eat as real as possible, that's the goal. But I do,
eat the way your grandparents
I
did.
will occasionally get some snacks here and there, and some, stuff
my grandparents
like
had a ranch with animals and shit. I don't know where mine are.
What is your meat to plant-based foods ratio, Logan?
Plant-based. I would say I eat a decent amount of meat, but it's not like a full-on. I would say it's
60-40?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It varies a lot. I eat a lot of eggs. I like eggs. I think eggs are probably the most complete whole food that a human being could find. If you can get good eggs, that's great.
I've been getting eggs from a friend recently.
Nice.
Pretty happy about that. Happened 3 times in a row now.
Sweet.
But I'll be hitting the grocery store at some point soon.
Yeah.
Have you guys watched a documentary about diet called What the Health, by chance?
I've seen some of it.
I have not.
I know it's pretty good. It's available.
I saw it.
It's on YouTube and shit.
It's right now. It's streaming on Amazon Prime.
Oh, nice.
So you can rent or buy it. I watched it last night, and they went into talking about chicken and eggs. So you guys are talking about eggs. I was eating an egg every day for lunch with toast, and according to Dr. Michael Clapper, MD, the flesh food I would eliminate in the American diet would be poultry, chicken, and turkey.
Is that from factory farm raised situations? I would assume, right?
Yeah, he didn't clarify, but I would assume that.
Yeah, those are some pretty gnarly operations if you've ever seen how they
Yeah.
raise them.
Definitely. Like the conditions are pretty bad.
I mean, and then what you eat is the sum of the product, you know. So it's like, yeah, I could see.
Yeah, I've lived with as many as 100 chickens, and there is to me, it's an unmistakable the difference between chicken meat or chicken eggs and from a bird that actually lives outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. with the physical protection of humans, but they eat bugs, they dig in the dirt, forest chickens will sort of like they want to sleep in the branches of trees.
Yeah.
They fly a little bit. The factory, I've seen breeds that were sort of, they're designed to be like a meat chicken, and they'll present as, is it a rooster or is it a hen? Like the sex of the chicken I've observed in breeds that are specifically tailored for factory raising, as much meat as fast as possible with the least amount of input, that those chickens are different than the ones that just come from forest.
Free range, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a big difference. I mean, I could tell there's a huge difference in eating the eggs and eating the meat, the taste of it.
Just the color of the yolk.
Everything about it. So I think it's a fair part of the conversation is like, are eggs good for you? I don't know. Like, where
Which
did that egg
eggs?
come from? Is chicken good for you? Well, I mean, what are we talking? Like, what are we talking about?
Is fat and cholesterol good for you?
You
guys?
know, I mean,
Is that good for you?
Your brain's made of it. So.
I know, it's like fat and cholesterol. Your brain will not work without those things. But certain
I will say
medical
that.
commercials over time repeated that message, and people are like, "Oh, all fat is bad." It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not. But some of it is, and we're making a shit ton of the wrong kind and feeding people with that. That's true.
And they just turned the food pyramid upside down, the one that we've been that we've been fed for the past, 30, 40 years.
We need a food orb.
Yeah. A food orb.
Yeah, we need a food orb. I think origination matters. I think source matters.
Yeah.
You know, like a chicken can be really healthy, or a chicken can have, autoimmune disease, just like a human.
Exactly. And do you want to eat that with chicken?
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're eating a healthy being, or are you eating a diseased being? I think that makes a difference. And let's face it, there are 350 million people in the United States. Like, it's not realistic that you're going to get eggs and chickens from forests to feed 350 million people. Like, that's a totally unrealistic, like that can't happen. So in that documentary specifically, they were sort of saying, what the health? Yeah, they were saying, like, well, one egg is too many. I mean, to me, I think that there were a lot of good points made in the film. I also, my personal take on it is that it was it's doing a lot of work towards convincing people that they should be vegetarian or vegan, which I'm not opposed to that in any way. However, they're sort of saying specifically in the film, one egg is too many, one slice of bacon is too much. Like, they're saying there's no reducing, it's elimination or nothing. And I disagree, because I believe that harm reduction is a real thing that matters. It's something that I've utilized, with myself, with my own body. It's like, okay, I have to take certain risks. I know that in my work or by choice, or I want to do this thing, I'm going to be exposing myself to a process, a chemical, an environment. Is something that can be dangerous to me, but I'm making a choice because there's something else I'm trying to accomplish that's not directly related to that. So I've tried to minimize that. So to me, harm reduction is a real thing, and to me personally, on my own personal food journey, I pared down meat to be as kind of a small portion of the total of what I eat, instead of being like the main, everything else was just to supplement that and get it down. So I see the benefits, and to me, my personal experience, reduction of meat mattered. That made a big difference. That was legitimate, and so the movie, they make a lot of good points that I won't counter because I agree with them, and at the same time, my personal experience is a little bit different than sort of what was presented as fact.
So, what are some of the points that you agree with?
That one egg is that I agree with.
Yeah.
I agree that, there are organizations in the United States and their mission is to produce treatments and they're holding on to hope that they're going to find a cure for, fill in the blank chronic disease, that are like the top killers, the things that people most commonly die from in the United States, which is heart disease, cancer, diabetes. I mean, that's real. It's a real thing that's happening, and it's true. They're illustrating how expensive this is to a society as a whole to have a higher percentage of people who are sick for a long period of time with chronic illness. So that's real. I've seen it in my own life. I have some experience with this. So those points are real, and I do. I've met bodybuilders who are vegan, and the first person I met that was like, I was like, man, you're in like amazing shape. Like like, what is your diet like? And they're like, I'm totally vegan. And I was so surprised, like, wow, that's kind of amazing. They're like, yeah, you can get your protein complexes with this and that. And they say rice and beans, this makes avocados, whatever. They, shared with me these things, and they were sort of saying, well, think of it however you want, whatever, but this is what I did, and this is who I am now, and I'm just telling you what, so that was their experience. They went on a food journey, they went on a physical activity.
There's a whole world of different little legumes you can eat.
And so were you asking me,
off of trees.
what did I think, what did I see my own evidence for and agree with in the film, or disagree with?
That you agreed with.
That I agree with. I do agree with those things. I also agree that those organizations that are sort of promoting, cures for chronic illnesses, they are funded by, like a lot of their funding comes from food manufacturers. And I think that a lot of disease does have to do with diet and lifestyle, and that's one of the reasons nobody wants to talk about it, on the corporate side, because it's a, they're funding both sides and taking money out of both sides of it.
Which both sides?
Well, I mean, okay, so, we don't have enough. It's not realistic that everyone's going to have farm for forest-raised meat and dairy products.
Right.
That are, in my experience, a much higher quality and cleaner than food that comes from factories. That there's a significant difference between the two. Well, that's not even addressed in the film, I feel two ways about it. It's like, on one hand, because there isn't enough for everyone. There's not enough pure, clean, angel kissed food for everyone in the world to eat. So when we look at the population of the earth, we're all here on the earth. There's a lot of us. We take a lot of maintenance. We eat a lot of food. We burn a lot of energy, and so you look at the world, and if it's a choice between you can eat this corn and you can live out your life and maybe die of cancer, or you can not eat and you can survive as long as you physically can make it in a state of malnourishment, and maybe you become 10 or 12 or 15 years old and then you die a slow, painful death because there isn't enough food to eat. I would choose the corn. Mm-hmm. We are all privileged because we have a choice. We can choose organic, or we can choose to raise chicken. Even if you don't have a yard, surely somebody, or there's some organization, there's some way in your community where you can meet people who there's a space for chickens. There's some way that you can get some of those eggs. If you dedicate to this, I assure you, your chances are very good.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get that.
I don't have that much land, just in a little house, small yard, but I could get away with a couple chickens in the backyard.
Yeah,
I could do that. I haven't done it, but I could.
But not everyone can have that. There isn't enough to go around. So what do we do? Are we going to support like food on a massive scale that has some danger? Like, what is the harm reduction? Is it like death from starvation, or is it eating dirty food? And so I think the trick is sort of, if you do have a choice, be aware that you have a choice and make your choice. But I guess I'm sort of sympathetic to like the plight of the world as a whole organism. I mean, there's a lot of us and we need a lot of food. Where is it going to come from?
I think they can absolutely produce healthy food on a mass scale, a mass industrial scale. It's just a matter of choice and will. I think they absolutely can.
You mean the farms that are already doing the producing right now could convert over to
you just look
the
at
other
like
options?
Joel Salatin and people like that. I mean, it's so obvious that if people can raise food in a way that is...
They already have the space and the land. They just need to manage it differently.
Yeah. As long as the sun shines and it rains, we can grow food in the most natural way possible, for sure. I think the argument that we can't, and therefore we need to rely on Bill Gates and these industrial solutions, I think maybe is, I don't know if that's necessarily the right avenue that we should take. I don't.
Yeah.
Unless we're trying to build colonies on Mars and we're doing it all in a bubble, then sure, yeah, maybe we have to grow our flesh in a lab and all that shit. But
so we convince them to change their business operations.
Yeah.
And then we do whatever small portion you can at your own house in your own tiny plot, even if that only is a small percentage of maybe some green, some vegetation stuff, but also some kind of protein from animals, some kind of animal fat. Maybe you have a small rabbit operation and you trade with the guy across the street who has eggs. It's like, These are little tiny things, but they could change everything if people start doing that. And then your whole block does that. That's like a big deal. It's like, okay, we're already a farmer's market. Like this place is a marketplace of food and nutrients and stuff.
I think agricultural systems that are partnering with nature too is something that we're not. We've become so divorced from the natural world that all our agricultural systems are like these little bubbles that exist unto themselves. But then when you look back at more indigenous practices and how much they had partnered with the natural world, like.
Well, if you live in suburbia, you are in an alien place compared to that kind of agricultural setup.
Absolutely.
They didn't really design your neighborhood with agriculture in mind.
No, they didn't.
It's like cars need to go here. You need a lawn, green lawn.
Cities, even in the medieval world and in the ancient times, like you did have these hyper dense cities, but they weren't growing the food in the cities. That was never a thing. Like there were always the farms on the outside that allowed the cities to even exist. Right. And if it wasn't for those farms outside of the cities wouldn't exist. They weren't like the cities in some cases were more even compact than they are today. Like there might have been like a lot of ancient cities where they didn't even have yards. It's like literally like apartment buildings, like the houses. They might have been made out of mud and earth, but it was like as far as you can
communal living.
As far as you can see, not necessarily even communal, but like the houses were adjoining walls for like. And they weren't growing food in the cities. They didn't. I mean, they might have small gardens here and there, but on the outskirts of those cities, there was just food for forever. And I think that's the problem, is that like there needs to be a change of consciousness and how
civil engineering, the whole thing.
This thing is designed to fail from the beginning. And then that gets back to housing and stuff too. And it's like bad design, bad civil engineering, bad planning, everything just designed to fail from the beginning. Everything is relying upon everything else. And so there's a million weak links, and you take out any one of those weak links and the whole fucking thing falls down. But yeah, I think food can be produced in a holistic, natural way, partnered with nature on a mass scale. It just requires the appropriate design and the will in the civil engineering to make that happen. And I don't think we have to rule out robots entirely. I think robots can be part of the solution too. Like we can incorporate them as well.
Yeah, you hear that, robots? We're not anti-robot. We just want to optimize you, put you in the right places.
Logan, who's the name that you used a little bit ago?
Joel Salatin, I would recommend looking into him if you have doubts that food can be produced in a
For so many people, it's
Yeah.
like regenerative
agriculture.
Yeah, permaculture type dude, large scale stuff though.
Yeah.
And how does he do it?
He has a lot of, but basically it's mostly rotational grazing type systems. So
Using land and animals in natural ways and rotating where they are on the land so that they don't destroy one area too much and they just enhance areas.
Their impact on the land is a net positive in that case. When you allow the land to rest, their impact and presence becomes a net positive. Their existence creates more grass as long as you can move them in a time that the ecosystem can regenerate itself and benefit from their stomping that creates little pockets where the rain can catch and harvest. Their manure feeds the grass, their urine.
Yeah,
everything is
they're
a
like
net
aerating
benefit
and composting for you, doing all
on
kinds of
site,
things.
and you're constantly moving them. And so every year the soil is increasing in volume as opposed to decreasing in volume, which is what basically industrial agriculture I think agriculture is even the wrong word for what we're doing right now. It's a mining operation. We're mining the future productivity of the soil for future generations. That's basically what's happening right now. It's an industrial strip mining operation, as opposed to a regenerative, accumulative building, which is what humans have been doing through most of human history. Is like the soil should be increasing in volume every year. We should have more topsoil. Our agriculture should be increasing more topsoil so that our future generations have an easier time, because the more topsoil it is, the more it holds water, the more it rains, the easier things are. But when you strip mine it, you end up with dust bowls. You end up with dependence upon chemical inputs.
Trucking things in to fill it back up and such. Yeah.
It's like a flywheel that's going in the negative direction when what we want to create is a flywheel that's evolving into a positive direction using animals.
Yeah,
and
nothing's
nature
supposed to be wasted. It kind of goes back into the same system to start over again.
Yeah.
The life goes back into the soil again. You're constantly building it. Who's the guy that does the rewilding stuff? He's another permaculture guy. Starts with the S, I feel like. Either
it's the Austrian guy,
maybe so.
Sepp Holzer, that guy.
Yeah, I believe it's him. And wildlife started re-encouraging the wildlife to return to the land, and it actually changed things about the water and the soil. The wolves were coming in, natural predators came back in, and those natural cycles increased the fertility of the land. And it was kind of a regenerative agriculture talk. I could probably look him up while we're talking, but his TED Talk was rewilding.
While he's doing that, Logan, do you think we have enough land to move these animals around?
I think have you taken a plane ride across the United States lately? There's a fuckload of land out there.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, there is.
There is an insane, vast swaths of land. The question is not, is there land? It's like, who has access to the land and how are they using the land?
It's almost more a question of how do we allocate it? Like,
Yeah.
how does the allocation work?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at like when the pioneers first arrived, Arizona, New Mexico, we think of these lands as like desert type environments. Those were vast, thriving grasslands, and they were vast, thriving grasslands because of the animals. And when they massacred all the bison and they stripped all the bison off the land turned to desert. It's because like these animals are required for the vitality of the land. And so, but when we want to put up fences and, fence everything off and have these little confined feedlot operations for cows, like that's a totally different situation. But I think, how do we partner with land in a way? I don't know if the government and the structure that we currently have, how compatible that is with the reality of what needs to happen and the way we need to be rewilding our, Why when you fly in a plane do you not see vast seas of bison just roaming the land, like there could be. We could have that again. We could have passenger pigeon migrations that literally black out the sky. Like there's so much vitality. We could have rivers full of abundant fish. It's all about design and engineering. But the question of is there enough land currently to farm in the way Joel Salatin is farming? I would consult him with that, but he says the answer is absolutely 100% yes. And I believe him.
Yeah, working with nature is the trick. It's like there's already these natural flows in the natural system. These are forms of energy, and you can't just... The industrial military mind says we can just superimpose whatever the hell we want on wherever the hell we want and make it happen, even if it's going against those flows of nature. Because we have the power, we can just use fuel, we can force it, we can make it happen. But there's these other techniques that are you don't have to force much, just a little bit of human ingenuity is required. Nature's already doing what it's supposed to be doing, providing things. You just have to harness the energy, and then that's where permaculture techniques come in, or natural building stuff. It's you're looking at how the structure already is that you're standing on top of first before you put in your inputs. And your inputs may just be kind of making it more effective, or trying to capture a little bit extra for yourself and your family. You're there's already a vortex here of living things. I'm just going to funnel some of it over here to me. And I'm just kind of laying out a mindset right now. I'm not trying to explain the whole thing, but the philosophy behind some of these techniques versus what the industrial farming and what all this Monsanto is doing and stuff. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, their incentive is to create revenue streams and supply chains that they control.
Because those are real too.
But rain falling from the sky...
Yeah.
Sun shining, grass growing. These are things that happen naturally of their own accord, as long as things are, in relative balance. But I do think with the question of diet, there's so much controversy in what we should be eating or what we shouldn't be eating. I personally have explored with a vast number of diets. I was even vegan for a long period of time, and it was probably one of the worst dietary choices that I ever made.
Why is that?
Because the human body requires animal protein. It requires fat-soluble vitamins. It requires all of these things that if you don't consume them and you just are eating plants and only eating plants, your body will become stripped of these unless you're going through extreme lengths to access specific vitamins to make up for all these nutritional deficiencies that are involved with a vegan diet.
So do you think that we need protein from animals to have protein?
I don't think 100%, but I think there are other fat-soluble vitamins within the animals and protein that is more readily digestible than eating soybeans or any kind of other vegan type proteins.
Legumes.
Yeah, I just
hemp.
know from personal experience too, being on a vegan diet, you become, after a period of time, it might be great. You might experience a cleansing effect for doing it for a number of months, but after a period of time, your body will start to become starved of certain elements that it's just deficient in the vegan diet, is my personal experience and opinion.
Yeah.
Just as a note, according to Dr. Milton Mills, all protein is made by plants, and it's not necessary to eat animal tissue to get protein. But you feel like that getting the protein from animals is beneficial.
Well, protein is not necessarily so simple. Protein is, when you say protein, what you're really talking about is a huge number of amino acid chains, and most proteins from vegetable sources are not comprised of 100% of all those amino acid chains, and so there is and then there's the question of bioavailability of consuming proteins. Sure, you could eat the proteins from a pea or a soybean, but can your body digest and assimilate all of those proteins in a bioavailable way as easily as consuming animal flesh? And I think the answer to that is absolutely they're more bioavailable in the animal form, because the animal has concentrated that in a form that is accessible and bioavailable.
I'm sure there's some good charts out there that break down like the omega fatty acids in a fish and tuna or salmon or something versus plant material. And I'm not saying that you can't do one or the other either. People have done all kinds of crazy diets.
sure.
There's people who are like eating hardly nothing out there showing us, look, you can do it. I'm basically surviving on air.
But what examples of a civilization, of a thriving civilization breeding population of Homo sapiens following a vegan diet? There is no example of that.
that
ever
I don't know.
existing. I mean, we do have examples of vegetarian cultures in India. There are some thriving, but they're getting their fat soluble vitamins through large amounts of milk, through eggs. They're still getting those animal products.
Yes, and
for sure.
The fats are so important to keep you alive and surviving.
Yeah, but you can't find a single example of a vegan indigenous culture that it thrived.
I think everything should be on the table for the generation that we are and the times that we are in. Everything should be on the table, and it should be like, fuck the socio-political stuff. Just think about survival and how crazy that could actually get. Not right now, but just think in the future, how crazy can things get survival-wise? And then how much practicing have you done on hunting, foraging, all of these bushcraft things, home gardening, DIY, like plant propagation, seeds, collecting anything that's edible. I mean, people have found ways to eat the bark off of certain trees, all kinds. Now we get into bug eating and stuff. Yeah. Maybe one day you have to. Crickets, I've eaten those. They weren't so bad.
No, I like bugs. I'm not against eating bugs.
I know a guy that had a business doing cricket flour for a little bit. I don't know if he's still doing it, but at that point, I wasn't so anti the bug eating thing because I didn't know about the socio-political stuff coming down the pipeline by the rich elite about to tell us how great of an idea the bug eating is. Meanwhile, they're going to have grass-fed beef.
Yeah, of course.
They will have the steaks. You eat the bugs.
Humans have been eating bugs forever, though.
I know.
They're actually quite tasty.
I just don't like things forced on me, or I hate the grand solution is this. This is the one-trick pony. It's like, there's no one-trick pony. You should learn how things work, like the holistic thing in your area, because there's no one that's saving grace. It's actually a whole little chemistry set you get to fuck with, and it all matters. The water thing matters, the soil, and your lifestyle around that. What kind of shit are you doing with your brain and your body during the day? That's going to change some of these factors, how much food and what kind of food you need, how big of a deal it is. Some people can survive off of very little, but they probably have a different lifestyle, too, to go with that diet.
Yeah. I think there is definitely a genetic component to diet, for sure. I mean, if you just looking at indigenous people around the world historically, the further you get away from the poles, from the equator, the further you get closer to the poles, away from the equator, the more animals they are consuming. The closer you get to the equator, the more that ratio switches to
fruits and plants and shit.
Plants are higher amount than animals. That's just the natural order of nature.
They're growing all kinds of shit. And then where it's really cold, you will die so easily if you don't get some of those fish or a big fat bear or a moose or something.
Exactly.
So, Logan, you were talking about how being a vegan wasn't the right choice for you, and you've tried a bunch of different diets. What are some of the other diets that you've tried?
I did try on the even more extreme of the vegan. So I did vegan for a while, and then there was a short period that I experimented with the raw foods. That's like vegan to the absolute extreme, where you're only consuming raw foods, no cooked foods whatsoever. So you're eating like sprouted grains, your dehydrated type stuff. You're eating fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Spinach, carrots.
Fresh
Yeah.
produce that doesn't have any cooking involved.
And that does have a very powerful like cleansing effect.
Yeah, there's a lot more live micro things on it too,
Yeah.
because you're not cooking them. Some of them survive the cooking process, but you do kill a lot of them with it.
Yeah, I'm not against vegan food or raw food or anything. I think those things are fantastic. I'm just at the end of the day, for my personal biology, I need animal protein and I need animal products to function. I mean, and in looking back at my genetics, like a lot of my genetics come from like Northern Europe and Icelandic types people. These people were just eating, seafood all day. They're eating, and so our genes do develop dependencies upon how we assimilate, and can absorb certain vitamins and nutrients from various types of products. I believe so.
Yeah, and so what is your meat to plant-based food? What is that ratio?
I don't feel like I'm a Nazi about like observing those things. It's just I'm not obsessive compulsive about it. I mean, I just eat real food, and if I feel like I'm not eating mostly meat, I'm not eating mostly plants. I feel like it's a balanced amount.
So when you go to the store, do you just get the organic chicken, the grass-fed beef? Like
I will if I haven't gone to a farmer's market to get that stuff. That's the ideal place to get. If you can get your protein from your local area, that's the ideal. But yeah, I will get grass-fed.
Yeah, you're getting it just a little more fresh.
Yeah.
But there are grocery stores that have some of those same farmers
some
market
now,
stuff.
for sure.
But there's like, it's in the freezer. It's probably been there for a while. The
Yeah.
farmers market guys probably just brought that there for you.
Well, and it's like at the supermarket, it's like how much greenwashing is happening on some of these products.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
like they realize that people want healthier options, so they might try to like trick you and sell you
Sure.
something that might not
That can
necessarily
totally.
be.
I know I've been scammed on organic stuff, and it's not all the same. But I just feel like a little bit more safe, and I trust this a little bit more.
There is something cool though about going to the farmer's market and like looking in the eyes of the person who grew that animal that you're gonna eat
dude.
or whatever.
I want to have more friends that have stand at a farmer's market. I want to know those people. When the shit hits the fan, those are your friends, dude.
And talking about affordability and stuff like that too, you can, you got a deep freezer, you go in with 5 or 6 friends and you can buy half a cow or whatever like that, fill up your freezer for an incredibly affordable price. Like, that's totally an option, as well. You don't
Have
have
you
to
noticed the media in any way, anybody shitting on farmers or shitting on people who live in rural places or anything like that in any way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
sure.
good. Just making sure, because I've picked up on that propaganda a lot of times. During COVID, I noticed a lot of it, but other times, just in normal times, doesn't have to be a significant event. Just little shit talking here and there about like that's not safe or it's dangerous, or those people are dumb and they don't know what they're doing. They're backwards. It's better to,
The number of farmers in existence has totally collapsed.
Dwindling.
It
They're
is
definitely
dwindling
trying
at
to-
such a rapid rate, and I don't know why or what the answer is. Like, that's a good question to pose. Is like why. What is the incentive for America, specifically our country? Like, what is the incentive to get rid of farmers, put everyone in the city, demonize people who live outside of the cities, and then replace it with this mass industrial system? Like, how is that making us safer or more secure?
For the monopoly men that own those things, it's great for them because it's like we are the new kings of all these industries. We've gotten rid of the mom and pops. We've gotten rid of generational farming, which there's lots of videos on YouTube, actual farmers talking about like this is a real crisis. They're coming after us. Like there's a bit of that divide too of like city versus rural, and like it almost seems like it's happening by design. Like dividing these two I think people would pick their side a lot too.
But how is that making us safe as a nation? It doesn't seem like it is at all. It's making us weak and dependent and fragile supply lines.
This gets into some interesting other topics maybe for another podcast. Like where do they want most people to go, and what do they want that life to look like? I don't know. Let's let them not decide that for us. How about that? We decide what happens. That would be good. We the people, not just these 4 guys here.
Awesome.
What's up, Freddy? Talk to us.
I don't know. What do you want to know? What do you want to...
Any epiphanies or anything bubble up in your brain past few? You can change it to a new thing.
Well, no, I mean, these are great topics. Yeah, the potato is hot, and I need to keep tossing it in the air. But, in the end, I mean, I spent a lot of my life lamenting the context and circumstances that I was sort of living in and operating in. And at some point, as I grew older and had more experiences, I began to look at it more as like, okay, what am I really trying to say? After volunteering for the environment, I became like a religious proselytizer. Like I was an environmentalist proselytizer. I was, and after a few years of that, I sort of heard myself and I was like, oh man, it's like trying to talk to people about religion or diet and maybe I just needed to shut up, because I was like, oh, well, my life could be better if you all would just change what you're doing in this specific way. And that's going to make my life better. Well, okay. That's great for me if other people want to participate in that, but mostly they don't. They have their own ideas and their own ways and their own psychology, and it's got nothing to do with me, and I am not the star of, the movie of other people's lives. So I was flatly rejected. They put me out on the street, and I thought, okay, that's fine. So, to me, more and more, it's like, okay, if I think that there should be something else available or some other way or some other thing, then if I can't figure out a way to do it or I'm not willing to go and do it myself, well, what is it in me that makes me think that anyone else is going to want to do it? So it's just kind of one of those things. It's that one by one by one.
That is a big realization.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not just for that topic. It's like all the big topics. Yeah, that's the way it is. Nobody wants to be told.
If corporate food is disturbing to me, then I don't. Nobody's making the choices for me when I go to the store. Mm-hmm. And I get it. Educational level is a thing. Not everybody, knows about food or culinary science or biology. There's a lot. There's a lot to parse through, but ultimately, as I sit here with myself, when I go to the store, I can get whatever is in there that I want. There's farmers markets around me. There's farms around me. We're in Central Texas. There's, what kind of meat do you want? Like, you can meet someone who grows it, who has herds of whatever it is. And so, it's just it's my choice, and I do make a lot of choice. I'm kind of minimalist in some ways, but whatever. My point that I'm making is that if I think there needs to be something different in housing, then I should work to change that. Okay, I've spent a lot of time on that. If I think there's something about the food that isn't good, well, I can make a choice for myself, and I did that, and so, it's that whole, it's cheesy, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, okay, that's cliche for a reason. Because what else are you going to do? Go try to convince people of anything. Go try to convince on a massive scale a bunch of people of anything. I mean, there's a science to it. There are probably billions of dollars spent in the United States on advertising and propaganda. I mean, that's all about convincing people on a massive scale to see things in a different kind of way. All right, well, as an individual, without those kinds of resources, I mean, good luck. Like, never give up, never stop trying, but realistically, like, we all have our own choices. I have only my own choices to make for myself. And so, if I see it in a certain way or I believe it in a certain way, then I'm free to, it's important for me to choose those things on my side of it. And, I think an examples are more powerful than words.
Yeah. Yeah. Your experience. People like hearing about your stories and what you learned, and you're not telling them to do something. You're like, look at this cool thing I did, and I got this from it. It's like just sharing a story and how you scored something. People like to hear about your score, and then a light bulb might get off and be like, okay, I could use that. Or how sometimes it's an economic thing. It's like, oh, you got me with the saving money thing. Like, now I'm interested in your idea. Did you really save all that money?
Because I mean, seriously, like, so there's so many people. Like, if anybody ever hears this, if you're out there listening, you're gonna be sort of into it. You're gonna have your opinion. There's gonna be like a set of people, and they're gonna be, all right, guys. Like, this is all cool. Like, I'm down with it, but. Seriously, like, how do I get the money from like out of the dirt in my yard and into my bank account? Like, how?
Realistic results. People like to hear about those rather than like it's this political thing of like, you should be living this way. That conversation's over. They're not listening. They're done. Their eyes glazed over. And I deal with this talking to people about like politic type stuff, talking about any kind of social things. Growing stuff, alternative lifestyles, all of that. It's like nobody wants to be told to like, you're doing it wrong, actually. Like, who likes hearing, oh, wait, my whole life I'm doing it? What am I, a failure? They just slam the door. Oh, by the way, when you were working with this environmental thing, was it the TCE group? Was it them?
No.
Okay.
No, it was very small. It was very small as a small benefactor. It's... I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to keep any secret. It's not a cult or anything, but it's so small. I mean, when I worked there's a phone. Like, you can call them. We can answer the phone. And the phone rang one day, and I answered it, and it was a guy from the New York Times, and he was writing an article, and he had been to visit, and he specifically wanted to write an article about our organization, and he was saying, I'm telling you that I want to do this, and I'm asking for your permission, and I said, please don't. Because like you can call me and we can have this conversation on the phone. But if you do this phone will never stop ringing. I mean, maybe after a year, it will calm down but at least for weeks or months, like people will come, it will overwhelm the space. It will cause great harm. Like, please, you don't have our permission, but I'm asking you on a personal level, please don't do this. And his response was, well, I already submitted the idea to my editor, so I'm writing the article no matter what. And I said, well, okay, I cannot make you do or not do anything, but I'm telling you, and I know that you're hearing me, this isn't okay. I'm asking you not to do it. It causes harm to the space because it will become overwhelmed, with this kind of publicity. And so, whatever, it would get the media hug of death. People would find out, be like, oh, I want to go there. So that happened. He wrote the article, and it was mayhem for a while, and then, that was a long time ago, and now it's fine.
That's good to hear that it's fine.
Yeah, I think another technique of talking to people about these things is instead of telling them, you just start asking them questions and try to find out about them and their life. And then if you can sneak some of this stuff into what they're already telling you about as you're showing interest in what kind of person they are, who they are, before you try to tell them anything, before you try to tell them what a good idea is or how they should change what, just you start asking questions. And then, telling them, showing them the fruits that you've found in it. And like, this has helped my life doing this, and this is my personal experience, and I gained this. They like hearing about that because then they can take an interest in these gains or the value that you've created somehow. All those work better than just telling people they're doing it wrong and there's this better way. That's all I was going to say on that. Speaking of just cold calling or knocking on someone's door or just having a random conversation with a bloke at the bar. Like, you just walk up to a stranger and start talking about some of this stuff, which I've dabbled in before. It doesn't happen immediately, but maybe a stranger conversation turns into like some of these revolutionary ideas or big topics, deep topics.
Great. Logan, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, guys, let's end it there. Thanks so much for joining me here and sharing your time and your points of view. Freddy Alexander, thanks so much. Lionel Gonzalez, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Logan Ryan, thanks so much. And I'll just close with this quote: let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Think about that.
Amen.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time on Don't You Dare.
Peace.